Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. Now that 2023 is officially in full swing, I wanted to take this opportunity to chat all about what this year is looking like for Nintendo. Obviously, there is plenty we don't know about quite yet, but this is the view from January. Joining me to do that, plus talk a little bit of the news from the past few weeks, is Game Informer's Kyle Hilliard. Kyle, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
It is going moderate actually.
Okay.
Yeah, not the best week of my life, not the worst
Switch
week. Yes.
During the break, I think.
What was that?
I said I played a decent amount of Switch during the break.
Yeah, what'd you get into?
Grapple Dog was my main Switch game.
Grapple Dog?
Yeah.
I don't even know that one.
It's like a platformer where you're like a little dog and you have a grappling hook. It's quite good.
Oh, it's aptly named then. We have some news to get to. Not a whole lot of news up to this point, but we got a little bit this week, and then we had one news item that was kind of lingering that I was like, let's just touch on that next week. But, as is ceremony, we are kicking off this episode with some Pokemon news. And it's not anything earth-shattering, but the Pokemon Company released a video showcasing and celebrating every single Pokemon in the Pokedex to date. Have you had a chance to look at this video yet? It came out this morning as we were recording.
No. How long is that video?
It's 9 minutes long, which is, it seems like a
really
long video at first, but it's like,
I
then
thought
you
it would
realize
be longer.
1,008 encounters, and it runs down all of the Pokemon, but it does so in like a very efficient fashion. Like it's like it starts off like the trainer in red and blue walking into Professor Oak's lab, and then is walking up to the Pokeball, and then it's like, all right, here's 1, 2, and 3, Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, and then it went through all of the starters in that way, and then it's like, all right, here's all the Pokemon you encounter in like your first route. And it kind of like did that for all the generations at the same time. And
yeah,
it gets up to 1,008 pretty rapidly. I mean, it's still a 9-minute video, but like,
yeah, I'm watching it now. It's, God, I can't imagine the amount of work this took.
100%, especially seeing as how, like, I mean, I'm sure they have a lot of archival footage they could like rely on, but like at the same time, like having to track down every single Pokemon in hopes of like compiling all that stuff, like
it's cool.
Just completely unmanageable in my eye. Like how many hours went into making this video, and then not to mention editing all this footage together in like a way that's like coherent. And I understand like the Pokemon Company has a lot of money, but like the amount of man hours that went into this could not possibly be worth like the return on investment, right?
But please continue to make this kind of stuff. I like it. I'm watching it now. There's some of these are just pictures of Pokemon, right, as opposed to like animated bits from the actual game, but it's still good. It's cool.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's pretty cool how they edited it all together. So I highly recommend going and checking this out. There's just no news to talk about coming out of it aside from like, yeah, they did some cool stuff with this video, but given how controversial Game Freak's approach has been to like not including all the Pokemon in their games, do you think this was kind of like a smart idea to be like, hey, look at all the Pokemon that you can't catch in Scarlet and Violet?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think it would be kind of crazy to have every single Pokemon in a new game, right? Like
you
it's
would
just
think
like
so.
It'd be too much. But I know people really want that. They want the sort of comprehensive approach. So I don't think it's insulting or anything. I think it's fun. I'm glad this video exists. I think it's cool.
It wasn't so much is it insulting, or I'm just thinking like from like the way the community has reacted to the Dexit, as they call it.
Oh, right, yeah.
Do you think that this was kind of like poking the bear of like, hey, look at all these Pokemon, and like people can be like, oh, well, yeah, well, why can't we catch most of them in your new game? It's kind of setting them up for like the spike,
Yeah, well, what are the comments like? Let's see.
Oh boy, I just instinctually do not go to YouTube comments.
Yeah, no, that's healthy. Honestly, that seems pretty positive looking through it. Whoever composed the music for this deserves a freaking raise. Well, he's like the head of the company now, Unova Kid 24, so like he's in good shape.
Was it Junichi Masuda that composed the music for this?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking of Pokemon music in general. I have it on mute, so I'm not interrupting my recording. But
well, I appreciate that. But yeah, so that's the Pokemon news. There's not a whole lot to it, but it's worth checking out if you are a fan of
cool.
Pokemon and have kind of been a long time fan of that series. Because
disappointed it's not a wrap though. Should have been a Pokemon,
Oh
right?
my god, the rapper's voice just getting raspy by the end of the recording because he's been going for however many hours it would take to say 1,008 names. My god. Kyle, I know that there was a game that you quite liked in 2022 called Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I forgot which one we were talking about there. Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And we are getting a new game called Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe that is actually a port from the Wii. But we got a little bit of new info regarding this game. Namely, this version of the game adds at least 2 new copy abilities from the Wii version. The first is called Sand, and it lets Kirby kind of shift the sand around him into a variety of shapes. And the ones that they gave as examples were a fist, which, sounds helpful, and a castle, which I don't know what the point of that would be.
Mm,
And then you reviewed Kirby Star Allies for us, correct?
that sounds right. God,
Okay.
I've reviewed a handful of Kirby games.
There was a copy ability in that called Festival, where Kirby and his friends would kind of dance and it would wipe out the enemies.
Okay.
That also is coming to Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Did you play Kirby? There's so many games that we're talking about here from Kirby. Kirby's Return to Dreamland on Wii.
I think I helped whoever reviewed it at the time. Played a little bit, but I didn't play it extensively. I think I just played for like an hour.
Gotcha. This was probably my favorite Kirby game. Probably lead up until Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It's just a really like kind of return to form for Kirby. And this was kind of coming off the heels of Epic Yarn, which at the time, I was fresh out of college and I was like, I don't really. Actually, I think I probably was in college when Epic Yarn hit, and I was like, yeah, I don't really like this aesthetic. I'm an adult now. I don't need this kid stuff.
I love the aesthetic, but that game is so simple. Like I kind of bounced off that one as well.
Yeah, but I definitely took to Return to Dreamland pretty quickly, and I loved it a lot, and I'm excited to play this, which, by the way, if you are interested in checking out Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, it is coming to Switch on February 24th, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later as part of this episode's main segment, which is running down all the releases, or all the big releases of 2023 so far. But first, we have a few more news items, Kyle. Did you ever play Toy Soldiers back in the day?
No, it's like a strategy game, right?
Yeah, it was one
for
of
Xbox Live Arcade.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So they announced in 2021 that Toy Soldiers was coming to Switch, and now it's actually on Switch almost 2 years later. So yeah, it is like kind of like an action strategy, like kind of like action meets third-person shooter meets RTS, and you control basically a group of toy soldiers as you carry out operations on a battlefield. And like, theoretically, you're like a kid's imagination playing out these battle scenarios. And I actually had a really great time with it back when it first launched on Xbox Live Arcade. And you know who also enjoyed it?
No. I don't know. Everyone. It was a well-liked game. I know that.
Game Informer's current editor-in-chief, Matt Miller, who gave it an 8.25 out of 10. So that was back in the day. I haven't played it since then, so it's like maybe it hasn't aged particularly well. But this is, I believe, called Toy Soldiers HD, and it includes the original game, all the DLC, and some new experimental levels. And if you want to jump into that, you can do so for $30.
It's $30?
It is.
That's kind of surprising, honestly.
It seems pretty expensive for, I guess, when was it, 2010? So yeah, it's a 13-year-old game that I don't think was $30 back then.
No, it was an Xbox Live Arcade game. It was like
it's probably like 10 or 15,
20 at most.
Yeah,
weird. I guess it has a lot of extra content.
Yeah,
right?
and
it has all the DLC. I guess
made the visuals a little bit better. I guess, but still, that's expensive.
Yeah, no doubt.
But it was a good game back then, so maybe it's worth it. You know who's had a rough go lately? Ubisoft. Did you see this news hit?
I don't know. I don't know what you're about to say, so I'm going to say no.
All right. So earlier this week, the company said that a lot of its recent games have fallen surprisingly short of its expectations. And one of those games that people seem to not buy enough of was Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, which I don't know. I think you played a decent amount of that. That it sucks that didn't sell well because that game's really good. Which, hopefully that doesn't mean like another sequel is off the table, because I had a really good time with what I've played of Sparks of Hope.
Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, the first one had the benefit of like being this weird thing that nobody saw coming, right? Like a Mario strategy game from Ubisoft. And then it was like the combination of it being like, oh, you know what, guys, this is surprisingly good, coupled with it being like there wasn't much on Switch yet, right?
Yeah.
Like it was kind of like an early, like you'd played a bunch of Zelda, you were ready for the next thing. Where this had a lot of competition. Like the reason I didn't play a ton of it was just because there was like a ton of other things to play. I mean, I think God of War came out like like a couple weeks after, maybe days. I don't remember the exact release date, but they were close.
Yeah, it was late October, I believe, was when Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope came out. And then, late October, early November, it's always kind of like the most crowded time for game releases. And, that November we got Sonic Frontiers, God of War, and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet in pretty rapid succession, which are all games that took a lot of attention away from games like Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope.
Yeah,
So
God, that one needed like a nice, like a summer, like just like a clear runway to sort of grab people's attention. Because that's a bummer. That's a bummer that it didn't do well.
And, that wasn't the only bummer news out of Ubisoft, because they also announced that as a result of these games not selling super well, because this was just one of the games that didn't sell up to expectations recently, Ubisoft has canceled 3 unannounced projects on top of the 4 that it already canceled last summer. And it also announced, wait for it, yet another delay for Skull and Bones, the most delayed game yet. Which, at this point, I just assume it's never going to come out. I played that game. It's funny because Wesley LeBlanc, you know him from this very show, you know him from Game Informer. He has written our 2 cover stories for us. I believe he's only written 2 for us. One was Skull and Bones. One was Dead Island 2. Both of those games are still not out as of this recording. And both of those games I saw demos for before I even applied to work for Game Informer. That's more than 8 years ago.
Jeez.
That is just absurd that both of those games are still not out. And both of them have gotten delays recently too, because I think that Dead Island 2 was supposed to come out in February. Finally, they're like, hey, we got a date, guys. And then it got pushed a couple months. And then Skull and Bones was supposed to come out in a couple months here. And now it is once again delayed to TBA, sometime in 2023 or 2024.
I mean, this is a Nintendo podcast, so we don't have to go too deep into games that won't be on the Switch platform. But do you think, like Dead Island 2, do you think Skull and Bones has just scrapped everything and started over more than once at this point?
I mean, so I saw a demo for it, I think in 2014, and then I played it for the first time, I want to say either 2015 or 2016, and I was just like, yeah, that's the Assassin's Creed naval combat with an extra animation added at the end if you win. I don't know why this is a standalone game. And then Wesley seemed like he was having a good time with it when he played it on the cover story, but I still just don't see how this is a full price game, aside from the fact that there's multiplayer thrown in, whereas Assassin's Creed, I don't know if there was ever multiplayer thrown into the naval combat. Full disclosure, I never really liked the naval combat as much as other people seem to in the Assassin's Creed series. I was like, yeah, just let me be an assassin again. I don't need to be a pirate. Ubisoft, with this news, I kept seeing this over and over again. They placed a lot of blame on, quote, the challenging environment, which I'm assuming, well, they've explicitly said the work from home nature, and then presumably the economic struggles over the past couple of years. Do you think that's the actual reason, or do you think there's just another reason that people aren't buying Ubisoft games, even if they review well?
Man, it's so tough to make any presumptions about why something doesn't sell. I don't know. I mean, I'm lately, I've certainly been sort of scared off of Ubisoft games just because there's these crazy commitments. I mean, even Mario Rabbids, I was like, I bet that's a long game. I don't know if I have time to play that game. But certainly Assassin's Creed is the biggest offender in that regard.
Yeah, well, I mean, the new Assassin's Creed game, Mirage, seems like they're kind of dialing it back and going back to kind of the roots of the series. So, unfortunately, again,
That's
another game not coming to Switch.
right. Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, Ubisoft, Mario plus Rabbids was really good, and I'm bummed that didn't sell well. But like, there's got to be some other reason, because like, you see Mario plus Rabbids, they're like, it's a challenging environment, work from home and economic struggles. Like, okay, yeah, those can be valid excuses. But then you look at Sonic Frontiers, which came out a couple weeks later and was like the best-selling AAA Sonic game in years.
Yeah.
So like, what are we saying here? And it even came out after Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. So it's like it's not like Sonic Frontiers like stole all these sales by coming out like the same day. Like Sonic Frontiers came out the same day basically as God of War Ragnarok, and it still sold well. So like, there has to be another reason, Ubisoft. Like, those could be contributing factors, but it's not the only factors.
Yeah.
This is the last news story. I know we kind of speed ran, I guess is the term here. What is your favorite Nintendo controller of all time?
GameCube, probably. Yeah.
Well, do I have some news for you?
Oh,
because I would agree with you that it's up there. Like, at first I didn't like the GameCube controller, but it has definitely grown on me over the years. And I'd probably still lean in like, oh, maybe like the Switch Pro controller is maybe the better controller like nowadays.
That's a good pick. Yeah.
But like, I think a lot of people would say the Wavebird in particular from GameCube. That's the wireless one. The officially licensed, or the official wireless controller of the GameCube. And there is a third-party
doing wireless well before it was cool.
Yeah, for real. Like, it was the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 were still very firmly in like wired controllers. It wasn't until we got like the PS3 and the Xbox 360 that they really jumped over to doing wireless, like as like an official controller. But a third-party peripheral brand has announced a Switch controller, like a Switch Pro controller, that pretty much is like a modern Wavebird. It has like the same C stick as the Wavebird, and it has all the exact trappings of the Wavebird, and it's called I'm assuming Nixie, NYXI, Nixie Wizard, and is a full-sized wireless controller modeled after the GameCube controller. And it's out now, or at least you can order it now. But unfortunately, when I tried to order one for myself, it was sold out. So hopefully they come back in stock. But it seems like it's a really awesome controller. I don't know anything about this company, unfortunately, but like, I would definitely jump at having a Wavebird-esque controller for like playing Smash Brothers or whatever.
Yeah, not great for like shooters and stuff, but platformers, and it's fantastic.
Oh, for sure. And I don't know if you brought it up on your. Hold on, let's see. I'm gonna bring it up here and see if you
best of controllers list that I made a couple years ago. Is that
no.
Okay.
I was legitimately just, and it also had like the buttons are illuminated and all kinds of really like great stuff. And of course, now that I'm like telling you about this and like trying to find it, I can't find it. But all right, here it is. So it retails for $70, which it's a little steep for a controller, but here, I'm gonna just throw it in the call chat here, and let me know what you think about this controller.
It looks all right. I mean, it's a third-party controller,
I like that the buttons are illuminated. Like,
that is cool.
It's just like kind of a cool design. Definitely a throwback to the Wavebird, and it seems like it's a cool modernization. And also it can be used as a Joy-Con, so you can break it in half, put it on either side of the Switch, and then you can play it like that on the go.
Yeah, that I love. I remember when the Switch was announced and it was like it explained how it worked with the controllers coming off. I mean, I feel like that me and everyone else is like, oh, that's awesome. So they'll do like GameCube and Super Nintendo controllers that split apart that can attach to the side. It was like, to me, it was like a foregone conclusion. I was like, oh, when will that happen? As opposed to, oh, this is a cool idea. So it's like, and Nintendo has never done that. So that's cool. Actually, I like that. I like that it breaks into two pieces and then you can use it just, on the Switch. That actually has me more excited than just looking at the base controller. That's pretty cool.
And as you said, like Nintendo, there's all these great ideas, great ways that they could capitalize on the nostalgia and the fandom that they have acquired over the last 40 years. But They just never do it. So it's like trying to say like, oh, Nintendo should do this. It's like, oh, well, then they'll never do it because they just won't do it. It's frustrating and it's weird. They're an amazing company, and obviously, like, I wouldn't have this podcast if I didn't love Nintendo. But also, they frustrate the hell out of me sometimes.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
But Kyle, that is the news for this week. We are going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to be looking ahead to the games coming in 2023. We are back, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, this main segment is all about running down the most noteworthy releases of 2023. Kyle, we are still, super early in the year, so this calendar is very much up in the air. Like, games could get delayed, games could get surprise announced and launched like the same week. We see that happen a pretty decent amount. Most of these games...
Advance Wars might come out. Who knows?
that is actually something that I wanted to talk to you about later on in this segment. So that's a very good call out. Yeah, games could get surprise delayed indefinitely, like Advance Wars Reboot Camp 1 and 2 did, because for reasons that, make sense in the moment.
Yeah, genuine, like perfectly reasonable reasons that I understand for sure.
But then we get to a point where it's like, right, is this freaking game ever coming out? Because at this point, it just feels like it might never come out, or they might just shadow drop it one day. Be like, oh yeah, this game that we canceled or delayed a year ago is available today. Congratulations, everyone. You did it. You waited. But, this is... as of this recording, this is an accurate list, and then at the end we'll kind of run down a list of like games that we know are coming at some point this year, or at least are announced for sometime this year, but are still TBA on the solid release date. So we're just going to kind of work our way through this schedule. It's not a robust list by any stretch, but it's some titles that I think are worth highlighting here. And the first collection of titles, I guess, come out on January 19th. That is when Colossal Cave, Persona 3 Portable, and Persona 4 Golden all arrive on Nintendo Switch. Do you know anything about Colossal Cave?
No, I don't actually. I mean, I know it's relevant to gaming history. It's like a remake of a classic game, but it's not one I'm familiar with.
So it's from Ken and Roberta Williams. Some of the people responsible for King's Quest, which one of the most iconic adventure titles of all time, and it's just pretty much like kind of carrying on that legacy. There's a game called Colossal Cave Adventure, released in 1976. That was a text-based adventure, and I don't know what the relationship is to that. Let me see if there's any kind of... So like in 2022, Ken and Roberta Williams announced that their new company, Cygnus Entertainment, was making a 3D version of the game. So it is like a remake of this text-based game from the 70s.
Right.
So, but like, remade as like a 3D adventure game, which is kind of a cool concept, really, because like text-based adventure games were huge back in the 70s. Back before like we really knew what like graphics were.
Well, yeah, I mean, before we could really make them to a certain degree. But yeah, I like the idea of this. I like the approach. I like the sort of idea, and I am curious to see what it's like and how it is, and if it is a good emulation of that original game, right? Because it's like if you were to go back and play the original now, it's like, well, this, it would be hard to get really excited about it, but you can play it and be like, I understand why this was really exciting in the 70s, and I hope that this new version kind of evokes some of that and like gives you this sort of historical context for why this was so cool when it first released.
And what I like about this is like this is like basically Colossal Cave Adventure, according to Wikipedia, which who would lie on that. It's one of the games that was like kind of responsible for getting Roberta Williams into like wanting to make games. So it's cool that now she's going back and like, hey, this is like one of my favorite games from like, it says 1979 was when she was playing it. And like, after playing it, she went and talked to Ken and she's like, hey, like we could make something like this. And then that's ultimately what kickstarted their career.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then obviously Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, two classics that we've been wanting on Switch for
overdue.
Yeah. And it's nice that these titles are especially Persona 3 Portable, because that's not available really anywhere unless like you have a Vita. I guess you could play the PSP version of it
Yeah,
on there.
that's where I owned it for. I mean, you can get the PSP game that came out in America. Yeah, it's a weird thing because it is pretty different from the PS2 version of Persona 3. Not in like story or game mechanics, but like presentation. It's pretty different. It's weird.
So I didn't get into the Persona series. I'm a pretty avid Persona series fan now, but I didn't get into it until Persona 5. I tried P4G back on the Vita when it first came out, and because everybody was raving about how this game is amazing, like, oh my god, it's one of the best RPGs of all time. And I bought it just sight unseen, and I played like the first 2 hours, and like there was like one battle in those first 2 hours. And I was like, I'm putting so much time into this game that I don't even know if I'm gonna like it. And I just eventually fell off. I was like, oh my god, enough of this. So
yeah, I mean, if you went back to it now, right, like after you're knowing sort of pace of the game and how it works, you'd probably be a lot more inclined to get into it, I think.
Well, Kyle,
right?
That's exactly what happened. I actually, Persona 5, I loved it, played it all the way through back in 2017 when it first came to the States. And then I was like, you know what? I want to play Persona 4 now. So I actually got a PlayStation TV because I wanted to play it up on the screen. And like the only version that was P4G was on Vita, and I didn't want to have my Vita and like carry that around because the Vita was already like well on its way out. So I bought a PlayStation TV, loaded up my Vita version of P4G onto that account, and then played it that way, played it all the way through. And I loved it.
Oh, you finished it. Oh, nice.
I did. I'm excited to revisit it though on Switch with higher fidelity graphics. It's not really a portable version of the game anymore. This is coming to all consoles, both of these games. But I am most excited to finally play Persona 3 Portable because by the time I got into the Persona series, there was just no way to play this game. And I'm excited to check it out at some point because I have a project that I'm going to tell you about later on in this show that I'm currently attempting to do, Kyle.
Okay.
And it's going to take up a lot of free time. So we'll touch on that as we get around like the later.
Bookshelf?
What was that?
So are you building something, working on a bookshelf?
I am not building a bookshelf, but it's nothing related to that whatsoever. I was trying to find some connective tissue there, but no, there's nothing. This one we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on because last episode was talking all about it. January 20th is Fire Emblem Engage. Have you played any of the recent Fire Emblem titles?
I reviewed Fire Emblem 3 Hopes for GameSpot. Which is not really.
That's the Musou one, right?
It's like a Musou one. So the short answer is no.
Okay. I liked Awakening a lot. I didn't beat it, but like I played a lot of hours of it. And then I didn't play Fates. And then I played a few hours of Three Houses and I really liked it, but like something else came out. And then Engage, I have played a few hours of it as well, but I've been like pretty head down on some other games. Like I finally finished God of War Ragnarok.
Congratulations.
And I am currently reviewing Sports Story for us. So I've been pretty swamped in terms of like my gaming time. But Fire Emblem Engage, I'm enjoying a lot so far. It does a lot of really cool things. If you want to hear more about our impressions, our hands-on impressions, you can go listen to the episode that Wesley LeBlanc and I did last week. But here's a game that you actually are you're pretty familiar with this, and it's not a Switch title. It is a game that came out on 3DS, and it is coming to Apple Arcade on January 20th. That is Pocket Card Jockey.
Right, yeah.
So I remember you reviewing this. This is a Game Freak game, so the developers behind the Pokemon franchise. Every once in a while, they'll make a game that's not Pokemon. We saw it with Little Town Hero back in 2019, which I don't think was quite so well received. But Pocket
Great
Card
soundtrack,
Jockey,
though.
Yeah, because that was Toby Fox, right?
Yeah.
And then he went on to compose stuff for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has some bangers on the soundtrack. So he's a great composer. But I don't think he does anything for Pocket Card Jockey. This is called Pocket Card Jockey Ride On, and it's coming to Apple Arcade. So tell people who may not be familiar with Pocket Card Jockey what that game is all about.
Right. Yeah. No. I reviewed it on 3DS. I remember. And it's solitaire, but it's contextualized as like horse racing. So you have a horse, a jockey or whatever, and depending on how successful you are at solitaire, dictates how well they do in the race. I'm sort of like dredging my memory here to remember how it works and stuff. I do remember liking it. Like, I like Solitaire as a card game. Like, I have, Solitaire on my phone that I play a decent amount. Like, it's just the go-to, like, I'm just going to play something for 5 minutes. Oh, Solitaire. And so contextualizing it with horse racing is weird. And you also like raise the horses to a certain degree, and like you retire them after a certain amount of time. I remember it being good. I remember liking it, and I think the phone is like a great place for it. So I think it's an exciting announcement. If you like Solitaire, just like generally, I would check it out. Yeah.
I mean, it's no Drill Dozer, right?
No, I definitely prefer Drill Dozer. Drill Dozer is my favorite Game Freak game.
One of these days we'll have to do top, like for definitive ranking, like top 5 non-Game Freak or non-Pokemon Game Freak games.
Yeah, Tembo, the badass elephant's got to be on there.
Yeah, I remember playing that because it's like kind of like a Sonic-inspired title, right?
Yeah, it's just such a funny name for like a Game Freak to put the word
funny.
ass in the game,
And I did want
Harmonite, another good one.
Harmonite, God, they put out a decent Yoshi's Cookie, right?
Yeah.
That was their
Pokemon,
first game I think that they ever created.
Wario's Woods. I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to go through in the future, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, let's plan on that at some point. Before we leave January 20th, I did want to issue a correction, Kyle. From last week, I flippantly said, and stupidly said, we'll say, that Fire Emblem Three Houses was the first mainline Fire Emblem game to come to consoles instead of handheld, and that was incorrect. There were actually 2 mainline games that came to GameCube. So there was Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Well, actually, Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn was on Wii, and that was a direct series to Path of Radiance. So I apologize, and thank you to Corey from Indiana for writing in to correct me on that factual error. So, Kyle, January 31st, we got a new SpongeBob game coming. Have you seen this game at all? Cosmic Shake, it's called.
Here, hold on 1 second. I got to let the dog in, Brian.
Sure.
Alexa, let the dog in. Okay, you can keep that in if you want.
That drives me crazy that you could just do that.
Yeah, I had the camera up to see when he wanted to come inside, and then we have it all automated.
That's very funny. But have you heard of SpongeBob SquarePants: The Cosmic Shake?
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it other than it's like a SpongeBob platformer, right?
Yeah, it is a platforming game. The graphics actually look very impressive for a SpongeBob game. And it says that there's this is actually probably the highest selling point for me. Like, they have like unlock new platforming skills, do like more than 30 costumes from like SpongeBob's history, and travel to 7 distinct worlds and all this other stuff. Here's the thing that got me like thinking like, ooh, I should check this out. Enjoy the in-game soundtrack featuring 101 songs from the series, including Sweet Victory. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that sounds pretty cool, actually. So that comes out on January 31st. And then there is a game that we saw on one of the Nindy World presentations, or Nintendo Indie World. It used to be called Nindies. Now they're called Nintendo Indie World presentations. And it's called Blanc. Have you seen anything about this?
How do you spell it?
BLANC. It's French
like
for
Benoit
white.
From Knives Out. No, I don't know anything about this.
So it is a kind of like a black and white, like almost like hand drawn or charcoal drawn aesthetic, where you're kind of like walking around as a deer, and it's like exploration based. And
I do know that now that you say the deer. I do know. I am. This does look cool.
Yeah. The synopsis says, lost in a sudden snowstorm, they will have to lean on each other in order to follow the footprints of their family left behind in the snow. It's a story of a wolf cub and a fawn in what appears to be a game that's going to make us all cry. So
good. I like those.
That comes out on Valentine's Day, oddly enough. So I guess we'll all be crying for another reason on Valentine's Day this time around. What are your thoughts on the theater rhythm games, Kyle?
They're fine, honestly. Final Fantasy has an amazing soundtrack, certainly worthy of a rhythm game. I think the rhythm game mechanics are okay. I don't love it.
Well, we're getting a new entry on February 16th that's coming to Switch called Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line. And here's the thing that like really is impressive is, like they've been on 3DS to this point, and we are finally getting this seems like the everyone is here theater rhythm game, because 385 songs at launch, and then there's like a pass that will add even more game or more songs from games that aren't even in Final Fantasy. Like I think they said like, oh, this will add like some songs from Nier, and this will add some like other like Square Enix RPGs. And it just seems like it's going to be like kind of like the ultimate version of theater rhythm. And again, like I'm kind of with you with like the rhythm mechanics not being the best, but I think that the music kind of carries you through that, because it's just one amazing soundtrack after another.
Yeah, I mean, as a platform to share the music, it's great. But yeah,
So
mechanically, yeah, fine.
So the deluxe version, so the core game has 385 songs. Then there's special music tracks that are 27 songs, and then there's a season pass that includes 30 songs, a second season pass that includes another 30 songs, and then a final season pass that includes another 30 songs. And the other series that are included in those season passes are the Saga series, Live Alive, Nier, Chrono.
Oh, Nier.
Mana.
Chrono as in Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger?
Yes.
Oh, maybe I do need to play this, actually.
Xenogears. And then there's two.
Really?
That say
Xenogears. That makes sense. For a moment, I was like, why is Xenoblade in there? But now I understand. Yeah, Xenogears. That makes sense.
But before you get too excited, the Chrono Pack, there's 2 Chrono Packs included in the season pass, the second season pass, and it includes a total of 12 tracks from that series.
Okay.
So
also, I will go honestly. Like I might, I would, because like I don't. That 300 songs is like so many, but it's like, well, if I buy the game and just play the Chrono stuff, maybe that's
that is premium
reasonable.
DLC. Just be aware of that.
Oh, that's I understand. Yeah.
But
what I'm suggesting, Brian, is I buy the game and then buy the DLC and only play the DLC and not even play the rest of the game. I'm genuinely considering that.
Well, when you buy the season or the deluxe edition, which is $100, by the way, which includes all the DLC, that gives you a total of 502 tracks, which is just a very impressive number.
Too many.
We're coming up on Rock Band numbers at that point if you buy a lot of DLC, which, I do buy a lot of DLC for Rock Band. Still to this day, I will peruse that every once in a while. I'll be like, oh, I love this song. I might pick up Rock Band again in the future.
I did that recently with, I mean, it's kind of similar, but like I went on the PlayStation 3 store and basically bought like all the PlayStation 1 games that I felt like I needed to have.
Oh, interesting.
Just because I was like, these are going to disappear soon. I would like to have a console where I can, boot up Metal Gear Solid and Silent Hill and Mega Man Legends 2,
Well, do you subscribe to PlayStation Plus?
I don't want to stream that stuff though.
The
and I also don't want to subscribe it.
Right?
I just want to own it on a box that I can plug into a TV anytime I want.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I'm gonna be bummed like years in the future when like the Switch is like the online service is getting decommissioned, and like all those SNES and N64 games that I've been playing are just gone because it's a subscription service.
Honestly, I need to do it with the Wii U soon. Like I have a ton of virtual console games on the Wii U. And I also want to grab all the DS games that they have on there, because that's really the only way to play those games on a television. And so at some point in the future, and like I should really do it in the coming months, like I should go and be like, just make sure I have all the ones I want. Like I have all the Zelda games, the 2. I don't know if Spirit Tracks is on there actually, but yeah. So, but even if it's just a box with, a hard drive filled with games, like that makes me feel safe for the future, that I can plug in with HDMI.
For sure. I mean, that is the one argument that I will entertain at this point of like the virtual console being a better thing than like Nintendo Switch Online. Because like I've made the point that like, Nintendo Switch Online, I was so against it because I wanted to just like buy the games that I wanted and have them on my system. But I talked about how like it almost had like the Netflix effect where, all right, I already subscribed to this service. I wouldn't have bought this game if it was just like a standalone release. But let me check out this game that I never played from like the Super Nintendo or the N64. And then suddenly like I expand my horizons a little bit because I play this game that I just, wouldn't have checked out otherwise because it would have required like a cost of entry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So but like, yeah, the ownership aspect of it, and like it's not an if, it's a when the services do go down, the theoretically they're all going to be nuked from your system, and then you're just left with nothing at that point, which is a real bummer if they're not carried forward in some way.
Yeah.
February 21st is the next game on the list. It's a game called Aka R. Have you heard about this game at all?
I'm almost certain that you're currently making it up.
It is actually a remade version of a 1982 prototype arcade machine from Atari.
And interesting. Okay.
They released it to I think one or two arcades just to be like, all right, let's see what people think about this. And people liked it, but then kind of the crash happened shortly thereafter and they never made it. So they actually got the original designer back, Jeff Minter. And he is he's back, and he is going to be basically seeing this to the finish line and making it a full-fledged game with modern visuals, but it's still kind of in that Atari retro style that we're seeing with their reimagined games. It's very neon and flashing colors and everything, but it's decidedly a retro looking title. But that's a really cool idea, if nothing else, of this arcade prototype that was well liked but just never had the chance because the industry kind of fell out from underneath their feet at that point.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
But yeah, that's to be clear, it doesn't have an official February 21st release date. Everywhere I look just says February 2023, unless you go to the eShop page, which specifies February 21st. I don't know if they're supposed to have that down, but that's what it's currently listed as. And I'm just going to go with that. Then February 24th, we talked about Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe coming out. We also have Octopath Traveler 2, which this time is not a Switch exclusive. The first Octopath Traveler game was at first, and then it expanded out to all the other platforms. And I almost saw this, because usually Nintendo's pretty good about not scheduling its first party titles around major releases. And I'm I wonder if they saw oh, you're going to put out Octopath Traveler 2 and not have it be a Switch exclusive. All right, well then we're not going to give you the courtesy of clearing the runway for you.
Right.
And we're going to put out a Kirby game on that same day. I don't have any reason to believe that that's true, but that's kind of how I played it out in my head canon. But are you going to pick up either of those games?
But probably not. Not really super. Just not really my genre necessarily. Is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I played Octopath Traveler, the first one, probably about 5 to 10 hours, and I liked what I played, but I was yeah, okay, that's enough. I don't need to continue playing this, and especially combined with, I think it was Joe Juba who reviewed it for us, and he was it's fine. It's perfectly fine. I'm okay, well, if you're not telling me it's he was the one that convinced me to play Persona 5 originally, because he was yeah, this is one of the best RPGs I've ever played, and I'm okay, yeah, I'll fine. You know what? I will check it out. After I told him my concerns with P4G, he said, oh, this doesn't have that slow start problem. So I checked it out, and sure enough, he was right. And March 9th, Kyle, we're moving along here. I don't have any experience with this series, so I hope you do, because I don't know what to say about it. Fatal Frame, Mask of the Lunar Eclipse. Do you know anything about this game?
I've only dabbled with Fatal Frame. I mean, it's one of those series that I need to play because I like survival horror games and psychological horror games in particular. I know that people love the originals, consider them some of the scariest video games. But yeah, I don't know much about this one.
Well,
it's totally new, right? Or is it a port?
This is a port of a game that only came to Wii in Japan in 2008.
Okay.
And, it's actually a Suda51 directed joint here. So it's,
really?
That's kind of cool.
That is cool. That makes me more interested. Yeah.
Yeah. Suda51, friend of Game Informer, I would say. He's a good guy. We've done a lot of features with him. He's a very good director as well. But, he, Mask of the Lunar Eclipse or Fatal Frame in general is where you're kind of looking for ghosts, I believe, with a camera, and kind of you can only see them through your camera. And
yes, that's how the mechanic. Yeah.
And it's I don't know how it's going to work, because this is a Wii title, so obviously it was heavy on the motion controls, but this is coming not only to Switch but PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PC. So I'm assuming it's not going to be heavy on the motion controls, at least this version. So interested to see how that plays, although I'm probably not going to be all about checking it out. And then March 14th, we have the first of two Legend of Heroes games coming out. This is Trails to Azure, and this is a sequel from Trails from Zero. And then I guess we'll just jump right into the other one, which is July 7th. That is the Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie. And that one says, like, has super solid tactical combat, but those are both multi-platform games. I know those series have a lot of love. I've never gotten into the Legend of Heroes games. Have you ever played any of them?
I have not. No, sorry to have nothing to add, but no, I haven't played those.
Well, I haven't either, so we're just going to move on. March 17th, Kyle, Bayonetta Origins, Syriza and the Lost Demon. This is maybe the most unexpected.
I didn't realize it was this close. For some reason, I thought it was like end of the year or something. Interesting.
So we talked about this. It was revealed, late last year. I forget how they revealed it. It was it part of, it wasn't a Nintendo Direct, but it was
at the Game Awards.
It was at the Game Awards. You're right. Yeah, I was like, I don't remember having a Nintendo Direct very recently, but like I remember this was kind of a recent reveal. But yes, Syriza and the Lost Demon is a prequel to the Bayonetta series, and it's kind of like, it looks like it's like an adventure style game almost. Like it's a very like storybook aesthetic, and there's actually a demo for this game in Bayonetta 3 if you go to like the shopkeep. I ran down it on like the Game Awards recap episode on how to actually do it. You can also look up how to find the playable demo of this game in Bayonetta 3 that I guess has been in the game since Bayonetta 3 launched, and nobody really knew what it was. They just assumed it was like a little mini game. But yeah, it's an origin story to Bayonetta before she was known as Bayonetta, and it comes out March 17th. And it seems very different from the core Bayonetta series. It does not seem like, oh, well, I like Bayonetta, I should play this game. It's like, if you're really invested in how the character came to be the character that you know as Bayonetta, that seems like that's the core appeal of this title.
Right. Yeah, it's a weird one.
We have a game or a date here that is not a game, actually. That is April 7th. The Super Mario Brothers movie is coming to theaters, and I know you're pretty excited about this. I am super excited. Yeah. What are you most excited about for the Super Mario Brothers movie?
I think it will be good. Is that an appropriate answer?
Sure, we'll take it. I think I'm most excited to see like what they dip into. Like at first I was like, okay, this has a high fail rate. Like there's a very good probability this will be a bad movie. And then as I see more and more of it, I start thinking about like how good everything looks. I think that the visuals are really, really strong. I mean, which I guess we should have expected given the studio that's behind it. And like it seems like they're really respecting the source material. Like we're seeing so many nods and homages to the stuff that we've seen in the games, whether that's like he's training on like kind of like an old school Mario course, or just all the various like visual cues from Mario's past. We had the Mario Kart scene that popped up in that second trailer that I'm beyond excited for. There's just a lot to really like get excited about in terms of like, all right, what are they going to pull from in Mario's history? This is clearly not a redo of the live action Super Mario Brothers movie, where it was like, yeah, it's Mario in name and like the characters are named things, but like they don't look anything like the characters aside from like Mario and Luigi. They have mustaches and they kind of talk like gruff Brooklyn guys. That's about it. But this one looks like it actually has respect for the source material, and I think that's why I'm most excited for this.
It's also there. It's being directed by Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelinek, who do the Teen Titans Go series and Teen Titans Go to the Movies, which is like honestly some of the best like animated television comedy of the last decade. Like I think with them sort of having being in the director's chairs, I'm hopeful it'll be genuinely funny, consistently funny.
Wasn't there a Stan Lee cameo joke in Teen Titans Go to the Movies?
Yep, it was really hilarious. There's a joke about Batman's parents being killed. Like, it's great. If you haven't seen Teen Titans Go to the Movies, like it is a farce. It's a parody about superhero movies in general. It's really great.
That's hilarious. You're a Mega Man fan, Kyle. I know that much
Mega
about
Man
you.
X
Okay, well,
specifically.
never mind then. We'll just talk about April 14th, which is the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. Is there any nostalgia, any like excitement for this whatsoever? Or are you
Yeah,
strictly Mr. Mega Man X?
I mean, I'm basically strictly Mr. Mega Man X, but like I remember these being on Game Boy Advance and being well liked, and I've always been kind of curious about them. So I'm glad they're sort of getting. I'm glad they're going to exist on a new platform. I'm glad they're sort of coming back to life. But as far as like me playing them, I think I played the first one for like an hour and kind of was like, I don't think this is for me. Is
Okay.
basically my interaction with it.
I'm just glad that Capcom has realized that there's a lot of people who really love the Mega Man series because for a while they just seemed to be ignoring it. And then like they put out Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 and 2. They did an all new Mega Man game. And then, they've continued churning out these Mega Man Legacy collections. They did the X Legacy Collection. Now they're doing Battle Network. And I'm just glad that they realized that like there's a lot of people that love these series and maybe we'll continue to get new games in the future. But, that's remains to be seen. But I think that it's probably also somewhat dependent on how these do for encouraging them to continue making new titles in the series.
Right.
But Kyle, this minor title coming out May 12th, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Not much to say about this title. Oh, wait, no,
Yeah,
it's
I'll
maybe
play
the most
it.
anticipated game of all time. No.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
I
Goes without saying, I'm sure.
could not be more excited for this game. This is I have another podcast, and I've had my co-host of that podcast on this show before, and he asked me a very interesting question. He was like, "If Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom comes out, because he knows how excited I am for this, if it comes out and it's either bad or I don't like it, would that be enough to ruin my year?"
Oh,
And
interesting.
at first I was like, no, like I don't think a game coming out and like me not liking it would ruin my, but like this is literally the sequel to my favorite game of all time. And it looks like it is phenomenal. And it looks like a game that I'm going to just adore playing through. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what? It would probably ruin my gaming year. Like there's other games on this list and like the multi-platform list that we have on GameInformer.com currently that I am super excited. Like I'm super excited for Spider-Man 2. That's one that I can pull out and then be like, yeah, that is one of my most anticipated games of the year. Probably in my top 3. But Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is like number 1 with a bullet because I just am so in love with Breath of the Wild. And this is a continuation of that. It's similar style seemingly, but like expanding it in so many ways, going up into the sky. It looks like there might be actual like caves and dungeons and new weapons for Link to use and an intriguing story that's playing off of what I think was the best part of Breath of the Wild, which is just Hyrule and all the mysteries that exist within that version of that world. And everything about this game looks so freaking good. And I cannot wait for this game to come out.
Yeah, I mean, alternatively, we don't know a lot about it too, which is like equally exciting.
Yeah. I think that it's easily my most anticipated game of the year, maybe my most anticipated game of the last several years because of how much I love Breath of the Wild. But
Yeah,
here's how
same.
here's how excited I am for this, Kyle. I mentioned a project that I'm undertaking currently. I realized, well, I haven't realized it recently. This is something I've known, but Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. It is a direct sequel to my favorite game of all time. And that is a game that exists in a series that doesn't typically get direct sequels. My other 2 games in my top 3 are games that exist in series that don't typically get direct sequels, but they happen to get direct sequels. That is Ocarina of Time with Majora's Mask and Final Fantasy X with Final Fantasy X-2. I have not played either of those games for any significant amount of time, but I decided it's finally time, Kyle.
Are you doing it?
So I started Majora's Mask the other night.
Oh, this is exciting.
And I've reached I played through the first cycle. So
Well, first of all, where are you playing? You playing on Switch?
I'm playing it on Switch. I'm playing it on the Nintendo Switch Online. I toyed with the idea of picking up my 3DS because I do have Majora's Mask 3D. Toyed with the idea of picking it up, charging my 3DS, and doing that. But I realized just my tendencies. It's so hard for me to like really sit down for hours on end and play a handheld title. unless I'm on a plane or unless I'm traveling somewhere or I'm somewhere without my consoles or my dock for my Switch. It is very hard for me to do that. So I'm playing on Switch because I know there's a better chance that I will be like, okay, let me sit down and play this game up on the screen. And like I said, I've made it through the first loop. I'm back to Link. I'm not the Deku mask guy anymore.
You've made some real progress then. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I'm planning on, because this is the recommendation that I got from former Game Informer creative director Jeff Ackervick, because he's also been on this train of pushing me to finally play Majora's Mask. He gives me as much crap about it as you do.
Good. As you should.
He recommended that once I get into the gameplay cycle to use a guide, because that way I can get Fierce Deity Link. And he's like, that is like one of the coolest moments in all the Zelda series when you finally do that and like you just feel so powerful. So you know what? I'm going to do that so I can figure out like, here's the way to do it and like to play this game the right way.
Yeah, I think my initial reaction is like, no, don't use a guide. But Jeff, I think is right. Because it would be fun it's not unreasonable to get all the masks. And that is part of the joy of the game is like, because every mask kind of is how you, not every mask, but a lot of the masks have really unique ways that you need to get them. Yeah, so I think you're taking the right approach. I mean, do as much as you can without a guide, but don't like limit yourself. If you're stuck, like, yeah, go for it. Look at a guide.
Yeah, so I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to jump on over to Final Fantasy X-2, and the hope, Kyle, is that I will finish both of those games before Tears of the Kingdom, and then I'll obviously play Tears of the Kingdom when that comes out, and I will have played the direct sequels to my top 3 games of all time.
I'm proud of you, Brian. I no longer can I yell at you for not having played Majora's Mask. Soon,
you'll start yelling at me about like not playing Triforce Heroes next.
Yeah, the Zelda classic, Triforce Heroes.
So the reason I think that this is not a fully fleshed out calendar is because we only have 2 major releases, one of which is a movie in April, 1 major release in May, no major releases in June, and then 2 in July. I talked about Legend of Heroes, Trails into Reverie, and then July 25th, Hogwarts Legacy comes to Switch, allegedly, because it's been delayed a couple times. This specific version has been delayed a couple of times now. It's now scheduled to come out after the previous gen versions. It's coming out July 25th. So if you're into Hogwarts Legacy and like the world of Harry Potter, that is for you. Also, I guess one date we didn't mention was, I believe, February 18th. I didn't write it down here. But that is when Universal Studios Hollywood opens Super Nintendo World. So you can go listen to what to expect from Super Nintendo World on a previous episode of All Things Nintendo when Alex Van Aken and I traveled to Osaka, Japan, and visited Universal Studios Japan, their version of Super Nintendo World, which this actually seems closer to that than I anticipated originally. So those are the locked in, as of now, dates for 2023. Obviously, all of that is subject to change. We might not even see Tears of the Kingdom in 2023, but I'm not going to put that evil out into the world. I'm just going to say, nope, it's coming May 12th. I think
it'll make it. I feel pretty confident about it at this point.
I agree. Now that we finally have a date, we finally have a name, we're seeing a little bit more of it. It's still kind of a drip feed of all of the information, which I like because, again, the mysteries that exist within Hyrule and like the story were some of my favorite parts of Breath of the Wild. And I hope that that's the same experience I have with Tears of the Kingdom. It seems like that's the way they're going. And look how long they held the name close to the vest because they were worried that Tears of the Kingdom would spoil the story.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they're taking this careful approach. They kind of, they're not as careful as Pokemon, which, that video that we talked about at the top of the show, that accompanied a press release telling us about the new species that exist in Scarlet and Violet. And I was like, oh, they're adding new species to Scarlet and Violet? That's awesome. And then it's like, no, it's actually talking about the characters that like made their debuts in Scarlet and Violet back in November. So like, it's a couple months too late for a press release like that to get any kind of coverage in my eyes. But whatever. I'd rather them be more secretive than spoil everything before the game is out, like we've seen with some movie trailer. Like for a long time, I stopped watching movie trailers because, like, I remember Batman v Superman. I don't know if you remember that movie trailer, but I was so excited for that movie, and in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have been. but they spoiled so much. They spoiled the inclusion of Wonder Woman. They spoiled the inclusion of Doomsday, which was the big twist in the movie. It's like, oh, it's not Batman and Superman fighting each other. They're actually fighting Doomsday as the main antagonist. And it's like, why would you spoil that in a trailer? And yeah, so many of those moments would have been cool to see, but I'm glad that the Pokemon Company and Nintendo in general typically take a more secretive approach to the way that they allow you to talk about games. I mean, it ends up being frustrating for us when we get our embargo details, and it's like, you can only play 30 seconds of a continuous clip at the same time. But I'd rather that than like, yeah, tell everybody everything. Who cares?
Yeah, yeah, it's to the benefit of the player ultimately.
So Kyle, we have several games that are TBA for 2023. I'll just run down this list. You tell me if you want to talk about any of them at all. AEW Fight Forever. This is going to be alphabetical at this point because none of these have actual dates. That looks like it's almost like an homage to like the old school like N64 style wrestling games, like the WWF and the WCW games. So that alone has me intrigued, even though I haven't been a pro wrestling guy since those N64 titles came out. So
Right.
It's not like I'm like have my finger on the pulse of pro wrestling. I've been to one AEW pay-per-view because I had some friends that were going, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. So ended up going with former Game Informer editor Brian Vore, actually. And it was a fun time. So I don't know. I'll check that out maybe. This is one that I have been keeping my eyes on for a long time, back before Mortal Kombat 11 came out, because we did a roundup of upcoming fighting games. And this game called Blazing Strike, it is an homage to like kind of like the PS1 era of 2D fighting games, where it's like highly animated sprite-based fighting games. And I've played a build of it, and it's super fun. And it's like a very, very technical fighting title, and it's coming out this year, supposedly. I mean, we've been waiting for it, I think, since 2019 was the first release window announced. So allegedly, again, we'll put that qualifier on there. It is coming out this year. Do you know anything about Bomb Rush Cyberfunk?
Again, I'm pretty sure you're making up these names at this point.
That is an homage to Jet Grind Radio. Or Jet
oh wait,
Set Radio.
I actually have this in my notes for us to cover in the future as Jet Grind Radio, a spiritual successor. I didn't know the actual name.
Yeah, Bomb Rush. And actually has, I believe, the composer from that game or that series composing the music for this title. It's very much a spiritual successor. That's coming out sometime this year. Disney Illusion Island. This was announced last year at, I believe, D23. Did you see this, where it's like a kind of like it looks like a Rayman Legends-esque platformer starring
right.
Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and Goofy, and they all have like
and it's like the modern animated version.
Yes,
right? It looks cool. Actually,
it does look very
I'm interested
cool.
in that. Yeah,
that's one that I have circled on our release list as waiting for us to find out when we're going to be able to play that game. Here's one that I've been waiting for a couple years now to come to Switch: Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. Those games,
that's exciting.
Final Fantasy 1 through 6 got remastered on Steam, I guess, 2 years ago now? Maybe even before that. And they announced that it is coming to Switch this year. They originally said, hey, you know what, if you guys give us enough fan demand and like these do well enough on Steam, we'll consider bringing them to consoles. And it seems like they got the necessary attention. Then this is the big one, I think, of the titles that we don't know when it's coming, but Hollow Knight Silk Song. You played Hollow Knight for us, I think, before it was even a full release, and you thought it was pretty good, but I think that it exploded beyond what we expected it to in terms of like the fandom, and here we are, Hollow Knight Silk Song. It was announced in 2018, 2019, somewhere along there.
I mean, I played it on Steam and really liked it and was even a big proponent for it. I remember it didn't make our list of that year, like our best of list, but it was on my personal list. And then when it came to Switch, it found new life and kind of blew up, which happens with games like that sometimes. So even though it's like was not a Switch exclusive, never was, it feels like a Switch game. So the sequel, I think that's where most people plan on playing it.
And I don't think the developers have come out and said this is coming in 2023, but during Summer Game Fest last year, Xbox put out a thing like, hey, all these games are coming out in the next 12 months, and Hollow Knight Silk Song was included in that. And somebody was like, hey, like, you guys said this thing, like, and this was on Twitter back around that time. They were like, "Hey, you said that these games were all coming out in 2023. Does that include Hollow Knight Silksong?" And they responded with like, "We said all these games are coming out in the next 12 months. So theoretically, Hollow Knight Silksong is planned to arrive at some point June or earlier,
Right.
at least on Xbox. I mean, maybe
crossed.
that's some sort of like Xbox like exclusive deal where they're coming out first on Xbox and then later in the year on everything else. But hopefully, it comes out sometime in 2023 on Switch." And then we have Metal Slug Tactics. We talked about Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. Who knows when the heck that's coming out? But Metal Slug Tactics is another tactical title. I loved the Metal Slug side-scrolling shoot 'em ups, so I kind of have an interest in this. And
Yeah, it looks cool.
I like a good tactical game. I'm currently playing a little bit of Marvel's Midnight Suns, and I'm really enjoying that. Which, speaking of which, that is also supposed to come out on Switch at some point this year, but we just haven't heard anything. That's a very, very good title, and hopefully the Switch version is very good as well. But that was that, and the last gen versions were delayed into this year. Minecraft Legends. I don't know much about this game, but I know it's coming to Switch, and people are excited about that. Do you have anything to say about that one?
No, I don't know this one. Yeah.
Okay.
Action strategy game. Yeah, we'll see. Could be interesting.
Oxenfree 2. Did you ever play Oxenfree 1?
I haven't, but I know it's well loved. I played their follow up, the one where you go to hell.
Party Hard?
Party Hard, yeah, I played that one. That was pretty cool.
No, was it Party Hard or was it?
No,
No, Party Hard's a different game.
Let's see.
Yeah, Party Hard is a stealth title.
After Party.
After Party. I knew it was Party something, but yeah, we were having a drinking game, drinking games against the devil, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So
it was good. It was funny.
But Oxenfree, I know a lot of people had a lot of love for that game. JV Gwaltney, former Game Informer editor, loved that game. I think Blake Hester is very excited for Oxenfree 2. But yeah, that's coming out at some point this year. Pikmin 4 was another big one that was announced last year as just a kind of like, yeah, we don't have any details, but coming in 2023, we got an announcement from Shigeru Miyamoto wearing a Pikmin shirt, and that's about the extent of what we know about that game. Sea of Stars, Kyle, do you know anything about that game?
Yeah, it looks like a sort of Chrono Trigger inspired throwback JRPG, which is the kind of JRPG that I like.
Yeah, and it is very Chrono Trigger inspired, and it absolutely beautiful. So it's by the developers that did The Messenger, which is like a 2D Ninja Gaiden homage title that eventually turns into a Metroidvania. Amazing soundtrack, pretty cool visuals because like you go back and forth in time. This is The Messenger that I'm talking about that came out I think in 2018 on Switch.
Yeah, between like NES visuals and Super Nintendo
so
visuals.
When you go back in time, it's NES visuals. Then when you go forward in time, it's SNES visuals. So like 8-bit to 16-bit, which is a very cool concept. And the game itself, the linear stuff was really great. And then when it opened up to a Metroidvania, it got a little bit of frustration mixed into it. I don't think the Metroidvania part was as strong. But Sea of Stars, it takes place 1,000 years in the past or thousands of years in the past before The Messenger took place. But it's a distant prequel. And, there's time travel mechanics in that as well. Like one character, I think, represents the sun. The other one represents the moon. You can change like the time of day. And yeah, again, the visuals are absolutely stunning. And because it's so inspired by the Chrono games, they actually got the Chrono Trigger composer to contribute some work to it, which is a very cool way to pay homage to that series.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one for sure.
Two more here, Kyle. Super Bomberman R2, which the first game I gave a very low review score when it launched alongside the Switch. I think it was a launch title for the Switch.
Yeah, I think it might have the Mario Rabbids sequel illness. I don't know what to call it, where it's like it was popular because it was a launch title and there wasn't much else to play for Switch. I don't know if people are really gonna buy the sequel. We'll see.
There was some glimpses of not greatness, but like competence in. I
think you can play as like Solid Snake and Pyramid Head, right? That's fun.
Can? Oh wow, okay, that's a post-launch update, I think. But yeah, Super Bomberman R, the first one, I was not a big fan of. A lot of that was because the level design in the single player was pretty awful, and then like the performance was terrible online. So it was like, all right, the single player is not great. The online multiplayer is fun, but like I remember it was like basically like a slideshow with how bad the servers were at launch. So like
yeah.
it got a pretty bad. But from all indications that I've read, it's actually they improved it a lot post launch. Like they bolstered the servers. I think they released levels that were not as bad as the
and like I said, they added characters too, a lot of free characters. So
good on them if they made Super Bomberman R a better game. Super Bomberman R2 is a game that I'm not super looking forward to, but I'll probably give it a look whenever it does come out.
Always with those kind of things, like I'm open to be surprised.
100%. And I hope it's good. Like I never want to root for a game to be bad. And like I don't have any ill will towards the Bomberman series. I actually liked it back in the day. It's just it's one of those series. It's like maybe they need to try something else that isn't like that weird, like dark, gritty reboot they did on Xbox 360 back in the day.
Right. Yeah.
What a weird thing that was. And then the final game that I have listed here is WrestleQuest, which I don't know very much about, aside from it is an RPG based in the world of pro wrestling. Which
I really don't follow wrestling, right? I don't know anything about wrestling. It's not something I liked as a kid. Like I don't know wrestling. But with that being said, like conceptually, I like the idea of this game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's on this list, because like if it was just like a typical wrestling title, I'd be like, okay, maybe you get a mention if it's like kind of pulling on the nostalgia strings like the AEW game seems to be. But like having this game be an RPG based like around pro wrestling, that is such a cool concept. And I would love to see other like sports titles. So, I'm playing Sports Story right now. It's not really like, I don't know. It's a different type of thing than WrestleQuest is, I think. Whereas like Sports Story is like, yeah, there's a story that gives you excuses to play golf. Whereas like, I think WrestleQuest is more like you're a wrestler going through like an RPG type story. So that is the list of games that I have. Are there any that like I missed that you can think of, or did we hit all the big talkers, you think?
Well, you mentioned Tears of the Kingdom, so I think we're in good shape.
All right. We're going to close out this segment. I want to see, Kyle, if you can provide one prediction for Nintendo in 2023.
All right, this might be cheating, Shay. Maybe you don't like this. I predict that we will not see a new model of the Switch in 2023.
Okay. All right. I think that, there's some data to suggest that might be incorrect in terms of like
you could say that for the last 4 years.
Well, what I'm saying is the cadence in which they've released new models of Switch has been an every 2-year cadence. We got one in 2019 with the Switch Lite. 2017 was the launch. 2019 was the Switch Lite. 2021 was the Switch OLED. We didn't get one in 2022. So you would think that maybe 2023 would be like the year that we would get a new model of the Switch. But that said, I'm with you. I don't think that we are going to get one. I think maybe we would get one that's announced in 2023, but not coming until 2024. But even that might be a long shot.
I would like one to play Tears of the Kingdom on. I don't think it's happening. I don't think it's happening.
Maybe like Nintendo comes out at the Game Awards and is like, hey, Switch 2 coming 2024, and, then wins the Game Awards if we're still doing that. I know people would always be like, who won E3? Do people win the Game Awards unless they won like Game of the Year?
I don't think so.
But that would be like a huge mic drop moment, especially since Nintendo hasn't really had a huge presence at the Game Awards the past 2 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, my prediction is something that is going to get announced. Yours was something that's not going to get announced. Mine is something that is going to get announced, and that is a new mainline Mario game.
Oh,
I think it's time.
Interesting.
We're
just be announced, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if we get an announcement, E3 Summer Games Fest timeframe, and then a release in November.
That's bold.
That's my prediction. I mean, think about it. Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey came out the same time or same year. Why can't we get the sequel to Breath of the Wild and then the sequel or successor to Mario Odyssey coming out the same year?
I mean, but they were probably working on Bowser's Fury up until 2 years ago.
Yeah, but that's my theory is that's the proof of concept for the next Mario game.
that they'll take like 5 or 6 years to make.
It could. It very well could. Or maybe they were working on it concurrently.
Maybe.
It's
I want it to
entirely
exist, to be clear.
That's my bold prediction, is that we're going to get a Mario game announced this summer for a fall or winter release. And of course, I have no like inside knowledge there. So don't take this as like a headline for me to be like, yeah, I heard this. No, I did not hear anything. I just am making a bold prediction there.
We're trying to will it into existence.
We're manifesting, I think is what they call it these days.
Yeah, right. I just don't. Yeah, I mean, maybe an announcement, but certainly not like this year. I mean, it was wild that we got a new mainline Mario and a new mainline Zelda in the same year. They don't. I mean, honestly, Nintendo doesn't need to do that. You know, I think it helped the Switch, but in the future, I don't think. I think they would probably just separate them just for accounting purposes.
And somehow, a different game that came out in 2017 alongside those titles has outsold both of those games. That's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, that we have continually hammered home how popular that game is. But we are going to take the final break of this episode, and when we get back, it'll be the long-awaited return of Definitive Ranking and the eShop Gem of the Week. We will be right back. We are back, and it is time for Definitive Ranking, a recurring segment where we take a Nintendo topic and give our personal top 5 lists. Since this episode was all about what 2023 has in store for us so far, Kyle, I want to get your top 5 most anticipated games coming to Switch this year. So start with 5, count it down to 1, just give me a quick sentence about each.
So they are we do want to do them numbered. Okay.
Yes.
Number 5 is the pixel remasters for Final Fantasy. Yes, I could go play these on my Steam Deck, and I'm sure they would be lovely, but I like playing games on my Switch Lite in particular. I've started Final Fantasy 6 a number of times in my life, whether it was on like an emulator or the Game Boy Advance re-release was the other time I really gave it a real shot, but I've never finished it, so it's time. Let's do it now.
I'm right there with you. I have the most recent time I tried playing it was the SNES Classic, and I fell off of that.
Yes.
So that it's unfortunate, and I wish that I have finished it. So that's one that I hope that I can stick with it this time.
Yeah, and just like you with Majora's Mask, I think having it on Switch will actually make it just more accessible and just playable, all that stuff, you know.
For sure.
Number 4 was one that you mentioned, and I think I made a joke about not knowing what you were talking about, but it's Blanc. I think that game looks really cool. Like, I love the style of it. And it looks, like you said, it's being pitched as a game that could potentially make you cry. I like games that make me cry. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. Who isn't?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the biggest cry you've ever done at a video game, do you think?
Probably either the end of The Last of Us Part 2. Just I'm not going to spoil anything, but not like it would be hard to without spoiling it saying exactly where. Yeah. And then there's the scene there's another scene in Last of Us Part 1. It's like in the middle of the game that really made me tear up, but actually now that I'm thinking about it, I've been kind of put on the spot, and those are the two that come to mind. Before Your Eyes absolutely gutted me, like embarrassing, like runny nose. I was at my desk playing it because I was going to talk to the creators before. I hadn't played it. I was interviewing them about the mobile version that came via Netflix. And I was like, oh, I should play this. I even knew what the quote unquote twist of that game is. I knew the full story, and it still just absolutely slayed me. Just like totally destroyed me. And I think it's it's being a dad and having a kid and all that stuff. That was all a factor. But yeah, I mean, Before Your Eyes, just my wife was in her desk next to mine just working, and she's like, are you okay? Like, what's happening?
So I think that was a game that I was really excited for because I love the concept of it. And then like I've almost been like afraid to play. Like I bought it. It's in my Steam library, but I'm like almost like intimidated because I know how like emotionally destructive that game is.
Yeah. And I mean it's very sweet, you know, it's not like they're making you fall in love with something and murdering it, you know, it's just like you end optimistic. You feel better about humanity afterward, but like, and it's not a long game, not to derail the podcast here, but it's like, just be ready, set aside some time and understand that you are entering into something difficult,
It's funny because I think The Last of Us, the first one, was the one that immediately popped in my mind, but mine was the kind of like the opening of it that hit me pretty hard.
Yeah, which yeah, it's fun. Yes, absolutely. That made me tear up. And then and then it came to PS4. Played through the opening again, cried. Maybe just maybe not like tears pouring out of my eyes, but definitely like chest tightening. Like, oh my god. Then they remade it recently for PlayStation 5. Yet again, felt that tugging at my heartstrings. And then I think I can say that I watched the first episode of The Last of Us TV show as well, and again it got me and then when I had the chance to talk to Neil Druckmann briefly in this like roundtable discussion about the show, I was like, thanks so much for just like making me experience that like on 4 separate occasions over the last like I don't know 8 years or something. Like that is just like it hurts every time.
It really does. Yeah, that's one that will always get me. I think it's that, and then like the end of The Walking Dead season 1 with the Telltale series.
Oh, right. Yeah, I never finished that. Yeah.
That one hits pretty hard as well. But like it's weird that like the first 2 that came to mind for me were zombie games. But I mean, I don't know. I don't really care
That's
for
where
zombies
humanity gets sort of that's where they test their limits.
We were the zombies all along, Kyle.
We are the Walking Dead.
Yes. All right, so number 3.
Oh yeah, Switch games. This I'll admit jumped to higher onto my list after just talking to you mere moments ago on the podcast. Fatal Frame: Mask of the Lunar Eclipse. Fatal Frame I've always been interested in. The thing that caught my attention was the Suda 51 stuff. I did not know that. So that that like makes me way more interested.
Yeah, I mean that's one that's not really too much on my radar, but I'm glad you're excited for it. Maybe I'll check it out eventually, because the Suda thing was also kind of news for me when I discovered that, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe that's more appealing to me than I originally thought.
I mean, maybe the better approach is like go play Fatal Frame 2, if I'm being honest with myself. Like if you want to play Fatal Frame, go play what is considered to be the best Fatal Frame, which I believe is 2. But I'll have to look up Mask of the Lunar Eclipse and see if people generally are positive on it. Like, is this a good first Fatal Frame to try? I think so. We'll see.
I hope so. All right. So what do you got for us next?
Number 4 is a
or
game...
number 2, right?
Oh, number 2. Yes, thank you. Number 2. You'll see why I said it that way in a moment. I don't know if I fully believe I'll be playing this year, but I am excited for Pikmin 4. I'm not even the biggest Pikmin fan, honestly, but like I love a good first party Nintendo game that Miyamoto's involved with, and I'm always gonna check in to see what's going on there.
Yeah, that's absolutely a solid pick, and it's actually one of my resolutions, if this does come out this year, is going to be that I want to actually give Pikmin an actual shot, because I haven't really ever spent a significant amount of time with the Pikmin franchise, and this is, I think, a good excuse to do that. But I mean, I also like Pikmin 3, it's on Switch. I think that's another good opportunity to do so. I just, I need to find time to do it.
Yeah, just assign yourself the review for Pikmin 4. That's how you play these games.
Exactly. All right, so this actually, I know what your number 1 is going to be.
How could you know?
So I'm surprised that one of the games that's on my list did not make it onto yours, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So, all right, let's hit number 1.
It's Tears of the Kingdom. Like, do we even? I mean, come on.
We were talking about in the last segment how it's like one of the most anticipated games of the last several years, not just this year. So there was never.
Do you remember the release date of Breath of the Wild?
March 3rd, 2017.
Okay, since March 4th, 2017, Tears of the Kingdom has been my most anticipated release.
Well, it's coming May 12th, and it can't come soon enough. Wow, there we go. Okay, so that's a very solid list, Kyle, and I'm surprised at the lack of crossover. We have 2 that crossed over here. Number 5 for me, Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line. I know we talked about the mechanics aren't the best, but like all that music just is so appealing to me. Having that wide range of Final Fantasy songs and also like other Square Enix tracks, which a lot of those are also known for having amazing music. So that's why it's up there for me. I'm also maybe feeling a little bit of a void in the rhythm game genre for myself lately. Like Melatonin, I had fun with it when I checked out, but it didn't really stick with me all that much. And I kind of would love a game with like just recognizable songs. You know, like that used to be filled by like Guitar Hero or Rock Band or the Persona dancing series, but we haven't had like a good rhythm game that utilizes like songs that I already know.
Well, and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but Beat Saber, I think, really fills that void right now for me anyway. I mean, they just released like a bunch of rock songs. You got Nirvana and White Stripes on there. I played the Lizzo pack recently. There's some good stuff on there.
Well, the problem there, Kyle, is I would need to go dust off my PlayStation VR headset somewhere and plug that into my PS5 somehow. I don't think I have the adapter.
I don't think that works.
And then, or I wait for PSVR 2, which apparently is like more expensive than a PlayStation 5. So I don't think that's happening because, you know, I barely used my my PSVR headset in the first place. I used it for like 2 reviews and then like for the first week where I'm like, oh, this is cool, VR in my house. And then like, okay, I get it.
I mean, Quest 2 is far and away the best way to play Beat Saber. Like, no competition whatsoever.
Beat Saber rules. That was the game that I played the most on my PSVR headset. But that was before any like recognizable DLC came out. Like I know we have like Lizzo and like you said, rock songs.
Oh yeah, Weeknd's Blinding Light is on there.
A very, very good song. I'm not even like a huge fan of The Weeknd, but that's one of the best pop songs I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I didn't buy the pack. I just bought that one song. So what does that tell you?
It's terrific. All right, so here's the one that I am surprised was not on your list, and that is Hollow Knight Silksong. That's my number 4.
Yeah, you know, I guess maybe the reason I didn't have it on my list, which maybe is a mistake already in retrospect, is like I don't really think of it as like a Switch game first, because I think I imagine I'll be playing it on my Steam Deck. Though if you put both in front of me and said, hey, you can have either platform if they release at the same time, I'm gonna go Switch just because I find the Switch Lite a more comfortable system to play on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you know, in retrospect, maybe I should have had Hollow Knight on my list.
It is all good, Kyle, because I got you covered on my list.
Thank you.
Yeah, Hollow Knight 1, I never beat it, but I had a great time with the hours that I did put into it, and I think it's just a really solid Metroidvania, and the combat's fun, and I'm excited to see what that studio does with another entry. And, you know, unlike movies where like usually like a company will have like a big hit and then they'll put out a sequel to the movie and like it's like, oh, this kind of lost a lot of like the essence of what made that game so good. Sequels to video games, especially like kind of like surprise successes, like I would say Hollow Knight probably was, is they're usually better because they learn some lessons from that. Like look at Assassin's Creed to Assassin's Creed 2. Like it's just a massive improvement because they learn a lot of lessons of what worked, what didn't work, what people don't like about the original entry, what they want to see in the next entry. And that's why I'm super excited for Hollow Knight Silksong.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, so that brings me to number 3, which you touched on this, the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. I finally want to get through Final Fantasy VI. And
let's do it.
I think this is the best chance. We should do a throwback to the game club for that, just to like motivate ourselves. I know Ben Hansen took that concept with him with the Deepest Dive over at MinMax, but like we haven't had a game club, I don't think, since he left.
Yeah, I love Deepest Dive, but hey, Ben doesn't own that idea. 1UP started that idea. But no, that would be fun, even if it's just more casual than like a game club or Deepest Dive of like we just check in every couple of episodes of All Things Nintendo. That might be a good approach. You know, don't not too much pressure on ourselves, but a good excuse. You know, we can hold each other accountable. Maybe it's something there, Brian.
First, I need to get through Majora's Mask and Final Fantasy X too, though. So those are the priorities.
I do want Majora's Mask updates on the show. I'm sure I speak for other listeners as well. I want to know how it's going, what you think, what you've been stuck on, what you like, what you don't like. You know,
maybe once I reach if I look at the guide, like I said that I was going to do, like if I reach like a halfway point somewhere along the lines, maybe I'll give an update then, and then an update once I finish. And hopefully that comes sooner rather than later. I do have quite the jam-packed weekends out through the rest of January and into February, but I'm really hopeful that I will have some time to spend with Majora's Mask. But
can I tell you a quick Majora's Mask fact I learned recently that actually made me want to replay it? That they only discovered like 2 years ago or something, is that the name that you enter at the beginning, I'm assuming you put Link. I don't know. Maybe do you put Brian or do you put Link?
I put Kyle.
Oh, that's weird. I'm not going to investigate that too much. But did you put Link?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Me too. I always put Link. That dictates the constellations in the sky. Like if you put different names in, it will rearrange the stars in the sky.
Oh wow,
isn't that cool?
I did see something about like the some discovery based on like when you like it's like every copy of Majora's Mask is like customized or something.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Gaming,
Did you know
right?
game? That's where that's from. Is they is that that's what the customization thing is,
Okay.
which is like a really I love that it just didn't even get discovered until like 2021 or something.
How do you even go about discovering that?
You dig through the code is what you do.
That's just absurd the way people like the like boundary break, like when they find stuff like it's like, oh my god, like that's just absurd. But yeah, Final Fantasy. Majora's Mask is one that I'm having a great time with so far,
cool.
And I'm hoping that I stick with it, and I'll be sure to provide updates if the listeners would like to hear them as well. But Final Fantasy Pixel remasters are that's my number 3, even though I think they're probably technically separate games in the grand scheme of things. But
right.
Number 2, I'm going to go with Sea of Stars. It's a game, again, I learned about it.
Oh, yeah. Another one I'm now immediately regretting not having on my own list, yeah.
I learned about this game before it was announced. I had a meeting, like a virtual meeting with the developers the first week of the pandemic. Like literally, like it's like, all right, cool. I'll be working from home for a week and maybe 2 weeks. And in the meantime, I'm going to talk to these developers and write this story. Probably by the time embargo is up, I'll be able to like be in the office again. But no, it
what
happened.
A fool you were.
We were all so naive in March of 2020. But Sea of Stars, that was a game that they told me, hey, it's probably not coming out till 2022. And that was the original plan, but it seems like they ultimately did not make that happen. And now I think it's scheduled for summer of this year.
Okay.
But yeah, it looks very good. It, like I said in the last segment, it's beautiful. It's inspired by some very classic SNES era RPGs, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. And then number 1, Kyle, Pokemon Stadium it's Tears of the Kingdom, of course. What else would it be? Like this was the least climactic number 1 of all time, because it's just, what else am I going to say? Although I am very excited for Pokemon Stadium to come to Nintendo Switch Online. But yeah, Kyle, that brings us to the final segment of this week's episode. It is the eShop Gem of the Week. So what do you have for us?
Right. So I got to look up the name because I cannot get the name right. Vengeful Guardian Moonrider is out January 12th. I don't know exactly when you're listening to this, but it's out on Switch and some other platforms. Finished it last night, played through it. A pretty short game, but like heavily, this isn't like a totally innovative game. It's a throwback to classic like 16-bit action platformers. But specifically, even though you're not shooting Mega Man style, everything else around the game feels very Mega Man X inspired, like the way the levels look. I think I had a tweet last night that even showed two Mega Man X enemies side by side and how close they look and stuff like that. And that's all in the positive. Like that's all to say like this team loved Mega Man X and they tried to sort of make a unique modern-ish platformer that's clearly inspired by it. And I think it's cool. It's a cool game. You're like the sword-wielding robot that just goes on a rampage against the communism or capitalism rather. It's cool. It's if you like that era of games, it's like it's not very long. The challenge level is like pretty good. Like it's right on point where it's like not too hard but also not too easy. Like, you play a boss, you maybe die twice, but then you kind of get the patterns down and then you're successful, which is like about where I like it. I don't really like to bang my head against a boss for too long. It's cool. Check it out. Vengeful Guardian Moonrider.
I'm looking through the screenshots right now. It definitely gives me more Genesis vibes than like SNES vibes.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a good point. And I think we have a new gameplay today video on it where I specifically call out that it looks a little bit more Genesis than Super Nintendo, which it's a weird thing because Mega Man X is not a Genesis game. It's like mechanically feels and looks like Mega Man X, but as a Genesis game and without shooting, it's like, there's so many asterisks and caveats with that comparison. But I swear,
But the structure is kind of Mega Man X. Is
yeah, you do play a level, and then you have 6 bosses and levels that you can pursue in any order. And then when you beat those bosses, you get their powers, which is, as much Mega Man as it is Mega Man X. But yeah, solid game. Check it out. It's on Switch and PC and PlayStation 4, I think, are the other platforms.
And as you had indicated, it came out this very week. So that's a brand new title for you guys to check out if you are listening to this and looking for something new and exciting to play in 2023. Also not one that we covered on our rundown. So that's up there with another game that I did want to talk about very briefly. I haven't had a chance to play this, but it looks beautiful. It's a twin stick shooting roguelite called Lone Ruin. I don't know if you've heard about this.
No, I'm going to Google it right now.
It looks really beautiful, and it looks like it controls well. I have not gotten my hands on it, so this is not like an official eShop gem. Maybe if I do get my hands on it, I will check it out. But if people are interested in checking those out, there's actually a sale on both of those titles. So Vengeful Guardian Moonrider is typically $17. It's on sale for 10% off for $15.29. Lone Ruin is typically $15. It is on sale for $13.49. As I'd indicated, both of those games came out this week, so I didn't include them in the kind of look ahead because it's more of a look behind at this point. But I haven't played Lone Ruin, but it sounds like Vengeful Guardian Moonrider is worth a look. So Kyle, thanks so much for sharing that, and thank you for joining this episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian.
And thank you so much to everyone for listening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. If you want to get any questions or comments in, you can reach me at allthingsnintendo@gameinformer.com or hit me up on Instagram at Brian P. Shea. And as always, you can join the Game Informer community Discord, which is a perk for subscribing to our Twitch channel. Kyle, dare I even ask you to tell me and tell the people where to find you on the internet?
Don't look. Don't try to find me. I'm hiding.
That's our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We will see you next time.